The Carolina Panthers are on the clock, and what will they do with their first pick of the 2025 NFL Draft? My name's Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and we are going to break down our first three-round mock draft for the Carolina Panthers in this 2025 NFL offseason. It's going to be a lot of fun, and before we get into that, if you do like the content that Ryan and I put out and you want to help the Traits You Take grow, the easiest way is hitting that subscribe button, tackling that bell to get notified when new videos come out, and leaving a like and a comment. Let us know what you think of these picks and who you would rather see the Panthers select. And Ryan, with that being said, let's see who we have them select. So Ryan and I, we did a full three-round mock draft. Then we put everybody together here. And so you'll see who they selected in orange, some other potential options as well that we'll get to in a second. But had them end up going with James Pearce Jr.,
Yep.
edge rusher out of Tennessee. I really don't think the Panthers can go wrong with too many of the defensive players that are going to have these first round grades. James Pearce Jr., I think, would be a phenomenal fit upgrade to this team in general. But if they wanted to go Nick Scorton, if Mason Graham fell to them, I would understand why they'd go Mason Graham. Even some of the other potential options like Jalen Walker, I think would be very unique. But James Pearce Jr., very bendy edge rusher, had a great career in Tennessee. Coming into the season, was actually projected to be the number one overall pick.
Yeah.
And so he's still going to be a top 10 pick. And so, Ryan, what are your overall thoughts on what James Pearce Jr. can bring to this Panthers team?
Yeah. So honestly, I think he brings a similar repertoire to what Brian Burns did when he was there, and he's a tall, kind of stretched out edge rusher. He's only going to be 245 pounds, but he's really strong for his weight. He definitely has a frame I think that you can build on, and he definitely punches above his weight in terms of his power and play strength. And he was a really good run defender, especially for being at 242 pounds, which is a lot of times what you see. Those guys just kind of get mauled in the run game and can't stay on the field except for on third downs. But he's not that way. He's a really well-rounded edge rusher. Not as like athletically gifted as like an Abdul Carter, but he's still like a really, really good athlete. And I just think like this is a good pick. If you want to go with more of like a true 3-down guy that has like a lot more meat and a little bit more power, I think Nick Scorton is the way to go. But Nick Scorton is not nearly, I don't want to say as finished of a product, because James Pearce Jr. still has a lot of room to grow. But with Nick Scorton, he is going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, just being at 280. He'll be there. A few potential options on that you'll see on the right. We didn't include guys that went in like the 2 picks behind them because obviously those are potential options, especially this high. But Jalen Walker, if they want to get a edge / linebacker to kind of boost some of that linebacker play there as well. Calvin Banks is on the board as well if they want to go with a offensive lineman that has 4 or 5 position versatility. And then Mike Green, he's kind of the hot name right now coming out of the Senior Bowl. He had 2 really good days of practice and then kind of removed his name from the list there. And he's just a really solid edge rusher. He's going to be a little bit bigger, I think, than James Pearce, but still kind of play at a similar way. Explosive edge rusher that has decent enough power. It can be a good enough run defender to stay on the field for 3 downs.
Yeah. You want to talk about a guy that made some money this week, Mike Green.
Yeah.
He definitely made some money this week. So let's move on now to the second round pick. And this is going to be a pretty consistent theme here for the Panthers. It's just going to be, I think, defense this entire draft. And you go get a guy like Deone Walker at 57 here. And it's possible even too now. We did this mock draft before the Senior Bowl went out. It's possible Deone Walker is not even here at 57.
Yeah.
And so if the Panthers would want him, they'd have to trade up potentially a little bit. But guy, absolutely like super huge and kind of physical freak. Ryan, I know you like talking about him at Kentucky and how well he can move around the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, he was a really interesting prospect that kind of came into this season with really high hopes and didn't necessarily live up to it. Some of that was they lost some supporting cast around him last year, from last year to this season. And I also think he was probably a little bit misused, where I feel like he's going to do his best work on the interior, mostly where in a 3-tech or in like a 0 technique, like lining up right over the center and just being a kind of this just big, powerful defensive tackle. And they were moving him all around. Like he took snaps in a wide 9 out at edge rusher this year. And like, it's just, wow, that's really fun to see, like this just behemoth out there, like running around and being an athlete at that size. It's not the best for his production and his tape. The other thing too is one of his big downfalls is the fact that he's 6'7". Offensive linemen can get under his pads and out leverage him at times. So he needs to learn to play lower and kind of like you think of like Hakeem Butler. I don't know if you guys remember who that prospect is, but he was a 6'6" wide receiver out of Iowa State. And he was this like monster of a wide receiver. And he looked like he was carved out of granite, but he just played so tall in like, which is good in like jump ball situations. But in every other time, he would just get out leveraged and open up his chest and allow DBs to get into his chest. And that's kind of what Deone Walker does is he plays so upright and he plays so big that he's such a big target for these offensive linemen to go hit and to get in front of. And that does limit him at times. And so I think if he can go to a place where he can get some good coaching and learn how to utilize his size at the right moments and then kind of play smaller at other times and utilize his length in better ways, I think he would be a really solid prospect. So and really good value here at 57. A few other guys, Ty Felton made this list. Jalen Royals and Matthew Golden were also in consideration. Adam Thielen he's a very good receiver, but he's getting older. Deontay Johnson obviously did not work out. Xavier Legette showed some promise this season. Jatavian Sanders is another really promising guy going into his second year with the Panthers. And so I think continuing to add weapons around Bryce Young in that wide receiver room, I think would be interesting. Gray Zabel, another guy that made himself some money at the Senior Bowl. If you can get him here at 57 or even move up a few spots, I think that would be really good value. He went at 60 in this mock draft to Detroit. That's not going to happen in real life. He's going to go higher than that. This again was done pre-Senior Bowl, so definitely not going to happen. And then TJ Sanders, another one. He is more of a pass rushing defensive tackle, but if you want to go with like a smaller guy to complement Derek Brown maybe a little bit more, I think that would be a decent fit.
Yeah. No, and with this Panthers draft and the way that the 2025 NFL draft is set up, it almost seems like it's opposite from last year, where it's so top heavy with blue chip, amazing offensive products. And I think like the first defensive player was taken at 15, Leatu Latu to Indianapolis, right? And so I can see if the Panthers were wanting to add a weapon, this would be the pick where I think a lot of guys could come off the board here. Jack Besh is another guy. I think this would be an area right in here as well if they want to get an offensive weapon for him and for Bryce Young. And so if they're one to balance it out a little bit, but we went the more defensive heavy route and we continue that defensive heavy route as well with their third round pick, the final pick in this mock, Jeffrey Bassa, linebacker out of Oregon, solid Senior Bowl as well, had 4 tackles. And so I think he worked his way up a little bit, but as well too, if you're just looking at this Carolina Panthers defense. And if you don't like Jeffrey Bassa, you can go put in Chris Paul or you can go put in a secondary guy in here as well, like Sebastian Castro or Maxwell Hairston as well, who went to Green Bay at 87 in our mock draft. And this is where I think you're just trying to find other good value guys that you can go and develop and add into this Carolina Panthers defense.
Yeah, and Bassa, he might go higher than this. Also, another guy that raised a stock at the Senior Bowl. A lot of that going around, I think, on the defensive side specifically. So, but Jeffrey Bassa, really good football player, but also a really good leader. I think he would bring a lot of accountability and just a really positive attitude into that second level of the defense and be your green dot player, making all the correct play calls and checks and getting that defense into the right look. And I just think that would be a really solid pick here. We have seen linebackers fall a good bit in past years. So I definitely think this third round is going to be a good spot to potentially go and grab a linebacker. You mentioned Sebastian Castro, Chris Paul already. The other potential option for me would be Isaiah Bond, just another speedster to kind of complement Xavier Legette, I think, to kind of play out of that slot, be a field stretcher for this team. And
especially
really,
especially if they go defense with their first 2 picks.
Yeah. And this is, so last year we had like the top end of the wide receiver class, like with Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze. And we still had some guys on the back end. This class is probably deeper than last year's class. There's just not a Marvin Harrison Jr. like Malik Neighbors at the top. Like you have Tet McMillan and Luther Burden and maybe a few other guys that are going to be in first round consideration.
Yeah.
But or like high first round consideration, but they're still not quite at that level of Marvin Harrison Jr. or those guys. And so, but this back into this wide receiver class, like there are going to be some really good receivers going in the second, third, fourth round. I think that teams are really going to like. So, all in all, though, for the Panthers, you look, that offense was playing really well at the end of the season. What's their head coach's name?
Dave
Uh,
Canales.
Dave Canales, yeah. He did a really good job kind of managing Bryce Young and putting this offense in situations to succeed. And then we really saw them kind of start to click there at the end. Their biggest thing holding them back was just that this run defense was the worst in the league by like a 30-yard average. Like they were 30 yards worse a game than the second worst rushing defense, which is really
Yeah.
bad. And so I think they really will kind of go focus on solidifying that the front of that defense.
Yeah. No, that's definitely going to be an absolute priority, especially I think when it comes to day 3 than just trying to find some other diamond in the roughs.
Yeah.
But it is going to be interesting to watch. There are sneaky enough good offensive players in that day 2 realm that I think they'll go. That 8th overall pick, though, that's almost a surefire defensive pick. I mean, maybe Ted McMillan, or maybe they go offensive line. And I say Ted McMillan's in skill position players. If they went offensive line and they want to improve it, they fell in love with the
Mhm.
guy. I can understand that because you still need to protect Bryce Young. Um,
Yeah.
but I still feel like though the defense was so bad particularly that defensive line. So we'll have to see. It's going to be interesting to see how the board shapes up for them when they get called to pick at number 8.
Yeah. So let's go ahead. Let's wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you thought of this Carolina Panthers 3-round mock draft. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? And other than that, we will see you guys next time.